And we are live. Welcome everybody to the Sponsorship Morning Coffee, morning on the West Coast, afternoon where Chris is over in Florida. But excited to chat with Chris here, Chris Walker with Gator Sports Properties. Chris, excited to have you on. You got the bright orange, the Gator orange polo on. I'm loving it, and really happy to have you here and chat with us about sponsorship.
No, I appreciate it, Nick. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so as we get started, I'd love to just, tell the LinkedIn Live audience, and for me, tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got into sports and how you ended up at Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'm originally born and raised in Gainesville, Florida.
Nice.
Ended up going to the University of Florida. My junior year, my parents moved to Jacksonville, so Jacksonville is now home for me. Graduated from there in 2010, and then decided to go get my MBA at the University of Alabama. So
that must have been a tough territory to rock your Gator game.
I still get a lot of flack to this day because being born and raised in Gainesville, yet both of my parents went to the University of Alabama. I was raised kind of both ways. And so it was kind of maybe a natural pull to go up to Tuscaloosa after the fact. But, I'm very fortunate that I went there to go get my MBA. But really more so fortunate that it kind of set me on this path within sports. You'll probably come to find out I'm not a very deep philosophical person, or I don't have a very large vocabulary. So I don't have a great answer as to why I want to get into sports entertainment. Just for the purposes of, I really thought it'd be a fantastic career and something I'd be happy with. So I was very grateful to be connected with the Learfield IMG College property in Tuscaloosa at Crimson Tide Sports Marketing while I was doing some work with their athletic department. So the stars kind of aligned there. I was just a assistant, intern, whatever you might want to call it. And once I figured out that the path of, corporate partnerships was something I wanted to do, they kind of pointed me in the right direction to get connected with Learfield Sports at the time, corporate, in Plano, Texas. And essentially, I was sent over to Plano after graduation, and there really wasn't a defined program for what it was called. It was really just kind of more of a glorified assistant to a certain extent. But I really had some visibility, some great insight into, working with folks over in business strategy or CRM, or even sitting on, meetings with national sales reps that were based out of there, just to kind of get the lay of the land and exactly how you go about the partnership process. And, fortunately enough, there's a really wonderful opportunity to just have line of sight to the executives that were based out of there. So just picking their brain, asking them if I can go to lunch with them. I'm sure they didn't really want to hang out with a 22-year-old at the time, but I'm very grateful that they did, because fast forward from May 2012 to October 2012, I got my first opportunity to sell sponsorships at their South Dakota property in Vermillion, South Dakota, Coyote Sports Properties. So a kid going from Florida to South Dakota, it was culture shock, really, and of course I had to buy some more jackets. But again, they gave me an opportunity to start my career and really throw my feet into the fire, so to speak. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had a fantastic boss up there that just allowed me to grow on my own in a relatively short amount of time. I did very well up there. And then I got an opportunity to go down to St. Louis to work for Missouri Valley Conference Sports Properties and the Missouri Valley Conference in St. Louis. So getting able to go to a bigger market, but a different type of focus. And really it was more so based around the Missouri men's and women's basketball conference tournaments that were based there in St. Louis. So although it was a 4-day men's and women's basketball tournament, we did have some other assets as well from a TV digital on-set activation standpoint. But it was tough. I mean, you're in a market with 3 professional teams there at the time before the Rams went out to LA. So it was a different type of partnership to a certain extent. But kind of always behind the scenes, it was a dream opportunity of mine to want to go work for the Orlando Magic. They were my favorite professional team growing up. Always wanted to work for them. And so I believe it was November of 2015, I got a call to join their staff as a partnership development manager. So went down to Orlando. I was with the Magic from January 16 to last June. And that's where I really learned what partnership was all about. Being able to work with fantastic industry leaders, those that have been there for 15 years, those that maybe come from other organizations, but really in terms of the knowledge and experience that I learned there, it was really kind of a melting pot of all these different types of styles that people enter, the partnership process with. And, without that experience, I don't know if I would have known what a partnership was all about. But last year around May, some colleagues that I got to know at Florida Gator Sports Properties reached out to me to see if I wanted to represent my alma mater, see if I wanted to come back to the college athletic space. And, wasn't necessarily sure if it was the right opportunity for me at the time, but at the end of the day, we just felt like it was a perfect alignment just based on leadership at the property level, the opportunity to continue growing my career, take that knowledge from professional sports back to the college athletic space, and continue to further develop my career. So I joined their staff as a senior partnership manager last June, and I've had a blast, an absolute blast.
Nice. I'm curious, when you were at the Missouri Valley Conference, you had all of these big name teams around you. When you were selling, I mean, was there a silver bullet that you could go to just compete with them? I mean, obviously head to head, going against the Rams, numbers wise, all of that stuff. How did you deal with just competing with gigantic, MLB, NFL sort of teams?
Well, our partnership threshold wasn't $100,000, so it was certainly a more cost-effective measure. But I only make jokes there. Of course, you got to find your value proposition and your unique differentiator. And luckily enough, in the Missouri Valley Conference, based in the Heartland, huge men's basketball following within that 5-state footprint. That's where most of the teams resided too, as well. Is you were able to connect with a lot of alumni at the executive level that obviously had a really deep affinity and passion point for the Missouri Valley Conference. And, whether people believe it or not, they're the second oldest conference in all of the NCAA. It is believe the first or second longest running men's basketball tournament in one city for consecutive years. So if I'm not mistaken, I think they just celebrated their 30th anniversary this past year as well. So they built equity in the marketplace that they're not going to be this type of entity that's just going to pick up shop and go do a conference tournament in, Chicago, or go do it over in Kansas City or Indianapolis, like you see a lot of the other conference tournaments do. So they really had a strong footprint and hold within that community. And I think I really undervalued how much they enjoyed the college athletic space being in a pro town. But it's not to say that it wasn't tough, because it certainly was.
Yeah, it always is. As you kind of sell for Florida now in the Gators, and you went to that college, and I assume you attended basketball games and you attended football games. How does that help you kind of sell the emotion, things like that within your packages? Does it help you kind of come off as more authentic on chatting with sponsors?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I kind of pick and choose my battles, where I show that passion and affinity. Specifically, if it might mean for somebody that is an alumnus of the school. So we might be able to share some, stories that we were inside the venue at the same time and different seating locations, things of that nature. Recall some really historic moments inside the Swamp and Stephen C. O'Connell Center as well. But I'm also very mindful not to go too overboard in terms of, how great the Florida Gators are, because there's a lot of data and analytics that backs up our standing here in the Sunshine State. But really, at the end of the day, too, it is about partnership. So it's really not so much highlighting what you have done historically and where you might be in, NCAA rankings, but really it's just all about identifying the objectives and the needs, the challenges in those marketplaces, and how our assets can help them, achieve desirable solutions based on key performance indicators and all those things. So I kind of pick and choose my battles there, but it certainly helps that I went to the school, and I certainly know what the Gator Nation is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now for you, obviously COVID-19 has stopped sports. I wouldn't say chaos, but it's brought a little uncertainty to the industry. Kind of as you're kind of chatting with partners, whether it's renewals or maybe new ones, what are you seeing that your sponsors are struggling with, either in saying yes to the partnership or just in general for business? They're looking for you to help because we're struggling here on that end.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. These last few weeks have been, difficult for a lot, and my heart goes out to all those people that have been affected by COVID-19. And it also is really cool to see kind of a community within LinkedIn that's really supporting one another more so now than ever before. And I hope that's a type of positivity and comfort that we continue to deploy on LinkedIn and within our own social networks once all this does pass. Um, I'm going to do my best, probably not to repeat a lot of things maybe that you've had conversations about already with previous attendees, or maybe things that you're talking about on your podcast, because I come at it from a different approach, which is coming over from the Orlando Magic to the Gators. This was a position that was created for me. And so I really had to start from ground zero in terms of actually building that book of business. Now, naturally, over the last handful of months, some big partnerships were handed to me to lead. But a lot of my time and attention too has been focused on what could we do to stay for partner brands that were in the pipeline, or even partner brands that might be coming to the table even after COVID-19 really took a detriment to the economy. So my attention has been on making sure that we are there for our current partner brands. Let them know that we're here to support them in any which way possible. Make sure, again, I'm sure you've heard this word a lot, empathy and compassion, and it's certainly important as well. And I think too, what I found out is through strategy conversations internally, and maybe a game plan that we have to take back to the partner, is maybe not the right strategy, right? We may have a conversation internally where we think this might make sense for our partner brand, in the next handful of months, but right now they're looking for value. They need help. So maybe we need to scratch that game plan entirely, and really, really take a deep dive into exactly what they need during the current moment. And obviously, a lot of different industries are going to be affected in a variety of ways, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. But again, too, being able to make sure that we continue providing value for those partners right now that are currently within our family, provide them resources, provide them things that they're not asking for, but we want to do just because we want to. But then, I have been spending a lot of time just trying to focus on, what can we do for, people that are within our pipeline right now, and keep them top of mind, because there's a lot of great sport teams in the state of Florida. We're all very competitive. We got 11 pro teams. We got 5 very well-renowned college athletic programs in the state, and we all probably have the same mindset. And there's no Harvard Business Review or any type of article that tells us the exact playbook to go by, right? So you got to do what feels comfortable for you. But at the end of the day, as a property, we've done incredible things for our partner brands to help provide them value right now. We have great leadership over at our athletic department with our athletic director, Scott Strickland, and their executive team, obviously within our staff here in Orlando and up in Gainesville. And really probably you've talked to IMG College, employees over the last handful of weeks is, they have really provided us a lot of support in a time like this, not just for us, but also for, our partner brands.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit kind of prospecting. That's been like a hot topic within sponsorship. Obviously, we can't just wait because we have a season coming up, and we have something that's of value to them, which is reach, influence towards fans. Do you have any particular strategies for you, or how are you coming about new business when you're looking out there and saying, hey, obviously we have to pull in some new sponsors. We should have college football games coming back. How are you reaching out? What's that process been like for you all?
Yeah, I would say it's probably 2 different things that we can discuss, and one of those being people that might have already been within your pipeline, and then maybe there are people that you have talked to after COVID-19 hit, right? So there's 2 types of approaches that I've been taking, and I could be completely wrong in this strategy. I have, again, there's no MBA course that I took to help me prepare for anything like this. So what I'm doing could be completely wrong, but it's what makes me feel comfortable in my own skin and how I approach people from a human standpoint, and making sure that we continue to nurture those relationships, whether they want to come on board for this season, or now is not the right time, or their business has been completely detrimented. So there's really not going to be a long-term opportunity down the road. So, I think a lot of people you probably talked to have taken that approach of, hey, we want to reach out, we want to check in, see how you're doing, how is your family, how is everything going at work, how are you getting through this together, and then subsequent weeks too. Hopefully there is a strategy in place where you have started to get an understanding of where they might fall for this upcoming season, because every partner that you reach out to, or every brand you reach out to, at the end of the day, they know why that you're reaching out to them as well, regardless of how you might lead in with the conversation. But I think one approach that we have tried to take, which imitation is the ultimate form of flattery in a lot of cases, is we saw a lot of people like doing the all-in challenge, gathering auction items, raising them for COVID-19 relief efforts, monetary and all of that. And so I figured, why not provide that same value to our partner brands with asking, is there some type of Florida Gator memorabilia that we can donate to you guys that you're using for auction items? I personally, I have some, nonprofits that I'm certainly happy to donate to anything that the partner brand is really, interested about. So if it's somebody in the alcohol and beverage space, is there something that we can do to help benefit the hospitality industry and bartenders that have been hurt by this? But at a certain point, you kind of need to understand where, things fall for this upcoming season. So, probably this week and probably later next week too is really just going to have to be the ask. I think we all, as folks in the sponsorship space, we don't like living in the world of vague, but this is a time that we have to live in the world of vague, because we're not in control of anything. We have to work within our partner's timeline, and we all are taking the same approach of, hey, we are moving forward as if there is going to be a football season, just based on everything that we read online, the approach that we take as a university and as a property. And so, at least giving them that sense of comfort, that normalcy, that we're moving in this direction. But understand too, we're going to be willing to be flexible and accountable if things do change in the future, and we're going to be here to support you guys, throughout that process.
Yeah. No, obviously we've had to shift everything over to digital, right? I mean, right now, if you're connecting with your fans, it's all through social, it's all digitally. How have you guys kind of strategized and gone about that, just for either baseball season, make goods, or anything like that? What's been the strategy overall to say, what type of content are we going to put out, and how can we maybe connect with our sponsors on some of that content?
Yeah, absolutely. Specifically, these are not going to be my examples or partner brands that I might work with, but ones that I'm highlighting, just on behalf of our property. But of course, with the cancellation of the spring athletic calendar, a lot of those benefits that you might get in venue, whether it's on-site activation, whether it's branding, or whether it's radio, naturally those things are going to have to shift over to a digital, more social focus. Within Learfield IMG College, there are a handful of properties that have their own designated social correspondents. So they're embedded within our property, and they work hand in hand with the athletic department to strategize, formulate a plan from a distribution, brand inclusion standpoint, to make sure that we continue providing as much value as we possibly can, through the end of this athletic calendar. So one thing that I thought was really cool that I have seen done at the professional level, maybe not yet collegiately, but one thing that we have seen is with our partners over at Florida Blue and our strength and conditioning head coach, Nick Savage, with the football program, he's doing motivational Mondays through our Instagram channel. So most of our content does run through our official athletic accounts across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And those types of content pieces that are unique to us, just based on those alignments, we'll continue to roll out as well. So, more partner brands that will be shifting over from an in-venue standpoint to a digital standpoint. And again, like the marketing mix for a lot of these partnerships, in the past, we're already starting to shift to a more heavy digital and social focus. So if anything, this has kind of pushed it even more, so to speak, where it was already going in that direction, but now it's being amplified, just based on everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing, the creativity, but then also we're building assets that when games do come back, that motivational Monday, if if the strength and conditioning coach has time, just because he's busy, pumping our own athletes or your own athletes up. But it builds enough assets that you now can go out and engage with and then sell on that end.
And I think too, our athletic department, they've done a fantastic job just continuing to push out content on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram specifically, it's I'm not telling any tales out of school. It's obviously a well-performing channel for a lot of sport teams, professionally or collegiately. But we're very fortunate with the Florida Gators that we have a lot of incredible moments that have taken place inside the swamp and over at Stephen C. O'Connell Center. So as people are looking for some sense of normalcy or some type of levity, the athletic department has done an incredible job of just putting out game moments, over the course of the last however many years, just to continue, providing that type of content on a normal basis. And I think what I've started to realize a little bit more, not just as an alumnus, but now being able to represent the university from a partnership standpoint, is, we're unique to the space in terms of who it is that we are. And what I mean by that is we're the only Gators in the college athletic space. That is something that is really unique to us. We have a tagline: in all kinds of weather, we'll all stick together. And it's perfect for moments like this. And I think those types of values and equities that we represent are things that can be extended through digital and social, and hopefully, through a partnership as well, down the road.
Yeah. Now, looking at the other Florida schools, obviously on the football field, fierce rivals, high school playing against high school. Do you all see, I'm curious, do you all see that just as far as trying to go get partnerships, I know that, a lot of the schools are, under the IMG umbrella, obviously, but, how is that dynamic? Is it, are you going head to head with Florida State to try and close that partner in that moment?
I mean, it's a great question. We have a lot of cross-property partnerships within the Learfield IMG College family. We're not unique to that in the state of Florida. It is common throughout the enterprise, so to speak. I think in terms of, because I don't want to speak on behalf of my colleagues and tell them how they kind of go through the partnership there, is, personally, I never want to talk bad about anybody else. It's not smart. It's not wise. You would never do that in a job interview or anything like that. Every university brings their own unique differentiators and value proposition to the table. Florida Gators, so to speak, we're not in a major DMA, but we have incredible access to major DMAs throughout the entire state just based on where our fan base lives. The same thing can be said for FSU, but they might have different coverage territory up into, Alabama and Georgia and parts of the Panhandle. And then specifically too, with partnerships that are more market driven, I encourage you to go down and speak with the Miami Dolphins, or go speak with the Tampa Bay Lightning. In Orlando, go speak with the Orlando Magic, because they really know how partnerships work. I think there's a lot of surveys that have been done to, force rank, what it is that sponsorship individuals put more value against versus what the partner brands represent. It's never about on-court field performance. It's about the value of those and how they align with those objectives. So, it could be easy to jest with somebody that's an FSU grad, and they can bring up the fact they beat us for however many years in a row, but, we beat them up pretty bad in the swamp back in November, but, it's all in good fun. It's just never been a sound strategy, I believe, to try to compete head to head with somebody like that. But if it makes sense for somebody to tap into Miami, if it makes sense for somebody to tap into, parts of the Panhandle, and they really do have a nationwide coverage with product and services, then, of course, we're going to connect the dots and connect them with our partners down at Miami and FSU.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. That also just helps you consultative sell, right? You're kind of saying, hey, look, I don't think maybe the Gators aren't best for you, but Florida State up there, they reach the exact regions your locations are in. I would highly suggest chatting with them. So I think that's key. Kind of as we roll into this next question, kind of similar. Obviously, it's really tough. There's sports business, hopefuls who have gone through 4 years of undergrad, maybe 6 years with a grad degree, and now they're kind of looking to get a job in sports. And then obviously this all happens. Do you have any advice, for somebody coming out of college who's looking to break into sports when obviously sports are shut down and there's a lot of furloughs and uncertainty?
No, that's a great question, and it's tough to kind of find a silver lining, because it's easy for me to say one thing, but if you really put yourself in the shoes of that individual, it's incredibly tough. This is the first time really from an economic standpoint that I've been so mindful about what's going on. I was a junior at the University of Florida when the financial crisis hit, and didn't necessarily have a direct effect on me or my family. So now that I'm being so mindful of it, is what type of value can I provide to people that are in that position? And this is something I probably don't admit enough, but in going to Alabama to go get my MBA, it was also really an additional opportunity for me to kind of figure out exactly what it is that I wanted to do in the partnership space. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that even though I did very well academically at University of Florida, maybe I didn't devote enough time and attention to actually building my experience and my knowledge within the industry itself. I can tell you for a fact, there's more that I could have done, and I wish I would have done more while I was there. There are kids that work exceptionally hard right now at the undergrad and graduate level, more beyond anything that I probably have ever did do, a handful of years ago. And so the mindset that I've always had is there's always been that's out there working harder than you, regardless of how hard you think you are working. There's somebody that's giving you that extra 10%. And so just put yourself out there. And it's easier said than done, but I wish I can go back and just take non-paid internships. I wish I could have just emailed more executives or write them handwritten notes and say, hey, I just want to be a sponge. Just let me learn from you in whatever capacity I might be able to learn in. And so if I knew what I knew now and rewind 10 years ago, there's probably a good chance I might not have gone to grad school. Who's to say? I don't know if my career would look that much different. If I didn't go to Alabama and get connected with the folks at Learfield Sports at that time, but who knows, right? It could have led me down a different path as well. So, again, for kids that are trying to apply and get internships, I know it's incredibly tough right now, and I know a lot of us probably put a monetary value. I think I should get paid for my services, but sport being a supply demand industry, there's a lot of people that want to get into the industry and not enough jobs, and specifically now too. So you have to just put yourself out there. And if you are in a position where you can do something for free and get to learn from somebody, I would certainly take that opportunity right off the bat. This is not going to last forever. Again, we are all going to get through this. I think a lot of people are looking at sports as pillars within their own community to say, hey, the green lights are back on. Let's try to get back to normal here through live sports entertainment. So, again, it's tough for me to say, because I think I like to have self-awareness, and I can bestow as much knowledge as possible, but without putting myself in the other person's shoe and showing that empathy, I can't imagine how tough it is right now to try to break through.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, though. It always kind of sucks to not be paid for the work you do, right? But somebody put it a really great way to me when I was looking at unpaid internships is if you get unpaid, let's say for 4 months, that's you investing. That's you investing so that when you do come out, you have so many skill sets and so much understanding. If you do everything the right way and really learn that, your salary will be twice as much or higher than what you would have had if you didn't do that internship and just kind of, kept going along and looking for that paid position. So I think, I think you're totally right. Plus, as this and some other people have brought up, there's nothing that prepares you for game day. You could read every book about how game day goes on and the behind the scenes, and there's nothing like actually, and I'm sure for you, being at the Swamp, having a sponsor not be where they need to be for an on-field recognition thing, and you having to jump on the phone and call them and say, where are you, right? I mean, that's the things that get you better so that, you're stronger when you come into that maybe job interview or anything like that, kind of moving forward.
I think the partnership space is so unique, just from the standpoint that you get to accomplish a lot of things while having fun. And I think it just goes down to to me, two main principles, which is what can I do to establish a relationship, and what can I do to help you? And we're unique in the space that we get to learn from so many different industries as well. So many brands within those industries that are endemic to the sports space. And so, again, if I can go back, to my time at the University of Florida, I wish there was more that I could have done and taking that approach that I gave to people right now. So, again, it's just tough for me to comment on that because I can't imagine how tough it is right now. And, I am remain grateful for the opportunity that I had today, but, it's all really tough right now.
Absolutely. As we wind this down, I'll ask you any questions for me, any last thoughts for the people kind of tuning in as we wrap this up?
Yeah. Question I had for you is that, again, I go back to that term, imitation as the, ultimate form of flattery. So we did something here at Florida Gator Sports Properties that we saw Sooner Sports Properties do up in Oklahoma, which is create kind of a community newsletter that was really more representative of our corporate partners. There was no value puts against it. This is something that we wanted to create on our own. And really, it wasn't so much to be intrusive or to bombard them, on a weekly basis. It was more so just to keep them involved with what was going on at University of Florida athletics with COVID-19, what our partner brands are doing from a philanthropic standpoint or from a social standpoint, just to learn from one another. And so I use it as an example to put that back on you that, are there things that you are seeing either professionally or collegially where you just went, wow, I wish that is one thing that every team could be doing right now, whether it's more so representative of who they are as an organization or whether it's actually providing value to partner brands?
Yeah, I love imitation. And
Yeah.
I think people put too much of a price on copying over imitation, right? I mean, Jordan's dunking style and Patrick Ewing's dunking style are totally different, but they reach the same goal, right? And I think that's a key thing. The takeout challenges, right? That we're seeing across the board. Obviously, the goal is to drive meals, right? We're chatting with Bowling Green and David. Their takeout challenge was buy one meal for a hero, and maybe not necessarily buying one for you because that fits their community, right?
Right.
You might have the total flip side of that where it's like, hey, we're going to do a buy one meal and you get one meal. It's the same goal, but it's kind of your own spin on it. And I think that's the key thing we should be looking at. We shouldn't just be looking at saying like, hey, this sports property did this, campaign. Let's just totally rip it because your fan base is totally different than somebody else's fan base,
Right.
and your partner needs are totally different. So I think I love it when imitation happens, but I think putting your own spin on it and making sure that it's reaching a goal, not like hey, this is cool. I mean, to be honest, I think in sports we're getting a little tired of spot the differences, crossword puzzles, and all that. That's great. You should definitely put that out there, but I think the key thing is how do you make it unique to your fan base, and then in sponsorship, how do you make it unique to your partners? Where if you're going to steal the idea, which is totally fine, but make sure it's really really fitting what your fans are going to find authentic. Otherwise, I think for you all, the Motivation Monday with your strength and conditioning coach is different than doing a Motivation Monday with a player or somebody within the organization, because hopefully people know who that coach is and know how fired up, as most strength and conditioning coaches do. They get fired up really fast, and that just helps build that connection with the program. So I think that's the key. Is I love it that people are kind of taking core ideas from everybody else. I think it's just done way better when you can actually fit it to what are your sponsor goals and your fan, authenticity of your fan base, rather than just, hey, let's just copy paste, throw it out there.
Yeah. You can only control what you can control. My mindset has somewhat been that, even if we may not be a first mover in doing something for our partner brands during COVID-19, I also don't want to go through the end of this to say there's little to nothing that we were able to do for them.
Mhm.
So, somewhere along the way, and it's fantastic through all these newsletters, podcasts, and really everybody highlighting what they're doing at the pro collegiate level, is you really realize how innovative these teams are, and what they can do rather quickly to adapt and to adjust, not only to take care of themselves internally, but also take care of their partner brands from that standpoint. So, I'm happy that we've been able to do some cool things digitally and socially with Game Rewind broadcasts. So we've taken truncated versions of really memorable football and men's basketball games. We're having that presented by Regions Bank right now, and then providing some value through some commercial spots. We'll push that out through TuneIn, the official website of the Gators. And then some of our radio affiliates, here in the Sunshine State, we've got a little north of 30 radio affiliates statewide. Not all of them, but most of them have been able to push out those radio broadcasts through their stations as well, as because, in some cases we're all, lacking for some type of content during a situation like this as well. So, again, it's what can you do to continue to adapt and adjust on the fly, and, make sure that we can try to stay, as top of mind as possible.
Yeah, totally agree with you. The creativity has been amazing. And what I hope happens is when we do get back to games in a normal, we don't stop that creativity, right?
Yeah.
We continue to say, hey, let's push those limits. Let's do a motivation every Monday. It may take a little bit of work, but that's more assets that we can have and deploy and engage our fans. So I love the new things that are popping up. My hope is that once this is over, we don't just go back to saying, well, now this is over, we're going to stop that. Just because we can find the things that fans really consume, and almost do little acid tests to say what's working, what didn't work. And this is a perfect time to kind of find those things and see what can continue into the season.
Yeah. And not only innovation as a property, but really innovation internally. Are there things that you can work on as a partnership salesperson within this industry? And there's all little things that we can. I'm probably the most self-critical person. Just in terms of, my own approach, sometimes I always kind of second guess some decisions I might be able to make or have made too. And I'm always looking to find ways to improve. And so I think now's kind of been a good time too, to kind of regroup, maybe focus on some things I had been putting to the side, and take that time to, nurture myself professionally and mentally moving forward. But, going back to your point, I think, once we get through all this too, I think there's going to be an expectation from partner brands. We have noticed what done in the community, and what can we do to continue being a part of that story, once sports does come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, man. Well, we really appreciate the time for you jamming with us. I know you're out there in the trenches trying to get some sales, trying to help some partners. But any last thoughts? Any ways that people can reach you or check out some of the stuff that the Gators are doing online?
Yeah, if people want to go online and check out what we're doing, you can go to floridagators.com or follow any of our social media accounts across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We have official accounts, but we also have accounts segmented for each one of our athletic programs as well. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, again, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or by email at chris.walker@Gator Sports Properties. And I'll certainly do what I can to provide value to anybody during all of this. So, Nick, before we wrap up, I did want to ask you one more question. Which is this. So, you're able to source a lot of best practices, you stay on top of trade publications and all of this. So, as we move forward during this, we are seeing a lot of articles say now is not the time to stop spending, from major brands, right? Whether that is TV or digital. And that there's going to be some type of unprecedented effect of a partnership between a pro college team and that company once sports does come back. You're going to want to be here once everything is somewhat back to normal. But my thought process too is that a lot of conversations that we might have and other people might have is, people are also going to be very mindful of ROI and what their marketing mix is and what dollar against it. So, I just kind of hear a lot of people maybe talking out of both sides of their mouth. So I was just wondering, in terms of your outlook, in terms of partnership for next year and future years, what do you think the landscape is going to be like?
Here's, and I do a crazy amount of research. I'm one of those people who like, my buddy's a stock broker, and we did a jam session on stocks, and I don't know a ton about stocks, but the first thing I Googled was what stocks made the most money in the last Great Depression. It's like, which ones grew? Obviously, you just pick those. Unfortunately, there's not too many ABs, but here's what I see from the last 2008 recession that we saw within sponsorship, which was and advertising. I mean, if we think about sponsorship in sports, obviously we're just another form of advertising. We have our own attributes, we have emotion of the game, we have loyalty. But the one thing that we have that we do see, and I'm hearing this and seeing this from brands, is dollars get, tightened. And it's because more than ever, you have to prove an ROI. And really,
Right.
if you think about it, if you're CMO, and you have half that you had before, you're going to make sure that you deploy that capital really, really smartly. So, what we're seeing, and I'm seeing this just with brands, Twitter ads are at a peak, just meaning, the amount that are run by big brands has peaked. And to be honest, from some of the brands that have done some force majeure on contracts, now you're seeing Twitter ads pop up. And that's just to say that understand from a brand perspective, they're going to say, hey, look, my boss is really going to be down my throat to prove an ROI on this. And sometimes our assets within sports don't show the immediate ROI, right? A lot of it is branding. Although obviously, I've always talked about trackability. You should be building it in. So I think the big thing is a tactical thing you can do to really make sure your brands are feeling it is always have one trackable asset in your package. And that alleviates the concern that I'm not going to get my return, right?
Yeah.
We want to go from, an expendable to an essential package. And an expendable package, when you look down your marketing mix, is like, well, do we really need this sign at Florida? How many sales does that lead to? Do we really need to do, this campaign over radio? Can we actually track that? If in your package you can really follow up with and say, hey, look, your job is your goal is to connect with car dealership or car buyers. You're a dealership. Here's all the signage, but here's how we're really going to judge that return. Here's this campaign that collects leads, and then we'll put it through your funnel. So I think the big thing is dollars aren't drying up on a large stance. I would love to see, what I want to do toward next year is see sponsorship spending, did it drop, and then digital advertising, did it actually increase? Because that just tells us that dollars are shifting. And then we ask the question, well, why did dollars shift? So I think, going out there and talking with brands still, it's commonplace known that you want to actually spend more on marketing in a down cycle than you do, in an up cycle. You almost want to save money for whenever that down cycle is going to be, because you can double down.
Yeah.
I think in sponsorship, we just have to prove in our packages that it's worth it. Or you're going to have some sort of statistic so that when the CEO or your boss comes in and says, hey, how did that partnership go? Well, they brought in like 1,500 leads. And to be honest, 50 of them are lower funnel. And then the signage makes sense. And yes, we should keep doing it and all that. So I think the biggest thing that's going to shift is brands are just going to be a little more heavy on prove this with some sort of data point. And we just need to make sure that at least one of our packages has some sort of data point that has that trackability, because I used to sell sponsorship, then I sold digital Facebook ads, then I went back to tourism, visitor guide, restaurant ads. And number one thing that digital ads have is you track the click, you track the purchase, and you can actually see if I spend $500, I should get back, $1,200. And sometimes with our assets, they're not set up for that. But if we can just do one thing, if we can just show one thing that says, here's your goal, you're going to buy a ton of signage, but we're also going to have this contest that's going to grab email leads. You can throw it into a Facebook audience, do whatever you need to do. That can make the entire package worth it, and they'll buy some of these auxiliary things on that end.
Yeah. And, I think it's tough sometimes when you get to a CPM conversation, especially digitally too. You hate to say it, but it's a conversation you're not going to win somebody from the partnership side, right? And if you're a really good partnership, individual within the sports space and you really care about that brand and hopefully it can become a relationship down the road, you might just encourage them to say, hey, like you should go ahead and do that. Like I get why you want to do it. We can build a customized partnership that's multidimensional, is omni-channel, that is fully integrated. But there's going to be some assets when this partnership that are going to be very tough to measure. And I think it just goes down to the basic principle of partnership too is, it's the passion, the affinity that fan can bring to the table. I forget where I heard this term, but it's called heart power. And it's really hard to measure the passion that a fan has for his or her sport team. So, it could lead to a 1-to-1 return, or based on, whatever was going on during that calendar year, it could lead to a 4-to-1 return as well. It's just an interesting conversation to have because I read the same things that you read too, probably. And, a lot of things focused right now from TV digital could be, top of funnel efforts, but it's not to say that partnerships can't help you with middle efforts or middle of the funnel efforts and, ultimately customer acquisition as well.
100%. It's all about the story you tell, right? It's
Yeah.
Hey, the most beautiful thing is when we're going to be able to actually quantify, like we hear from our partners all the time, oh, we love working with the Gators because people walk into my store and say, I'm a Gator fan. I've been buying Subarus my whole life. And now I don't know if you guys have a car dealership, but now I'm buying Toyota or whatever that is, right? So, we always love hearing that, but how do we put a trackable dollar on that, I think is the next step.
Yeah.
And then, from there, I think to your other point too is flexibility, right?
Yeah.
We've been in a great economy selling $100,000 package. It's not that hard with the tools that we have and the access that we have. I wouldn't fall in love with, hey, they either buy 100,000 or they don't buy anything at all. What I mean? We're going to have to get really flexible if for no other reason than cash flow might be tough. I mean, somebody might 100% want to eventually spend 50K with you or 100K, but they just have to piece packages together because their cash flow is nowhere near what it used to be. So I think that's going to be a big thing too, is just how you can quantify that thing that we know in sports, which is when I say go to this brand, you're a loyal fan, you're going to go to that brand. And then the second side of that is being flexible to say, hey, look, can we just get you on a 1 month, $1,000 plan? You have the ability to opt out in the second month and get you started there, because that's $1,000 in the door instead of $0 on that. And so I think that's gonna be another trend is, again, we compete with digital ads in some sense because it's another way to advertise, and digital ads are flexible. You can run a Facebook ad for a day, see it's performing terribly, and just turn it off and only lose a couple $100. Whereas, if I'm going to come to you and say, hey, buy this whole 50K package, that's, you could be halfway through and basically say, well, we're not seeing the return. Now I'm stuck with this. And I think that's the anxiety that a lot of our brands, especially on the smaller level, will have is, do I really want to get halfway through this campaign and realize that it wasn't working? And you're going to have that conversation with your sponsor and say, hey, look, I get it. You really, money's tight and you really have to spend it well. Here's how we're going to track it. And then second, I'm going to make it flexible for you. And I'm going to restructure this to a 3-month deal and maybe just football instead of, a full 9-month deal where it's all sports. And then we can revisit at the end of that 3 months and say, if after 3 months we've hit certain milestones, let's lock in this next, 2-year plan or whatever that is. But I think that's the trend you're going to see a lot of, is the teams that win a lot of deals are going to be the ones that are going to say, hey, we'll be flexible and we'll understand exactly what you're trying to do with this partnership. And in some way, I'll quantify it with activation. It won't be everything, right? It's like you still need this signage. I can't just sell you on this sweepstakes that gets email leads, but some way I need to be able to almost give my CMO ammo to go back to their boss and say, well, I want to drop another 100K into this partnership because here's what we've proven with, this partnership. So I think those are the two big things: is flexibility of assets, and then if you're going to tell the story that, hey, brands that spend a ton of money now actually come out on top after recessions, you just have to kind of say, we're the ads you want to spend on because this, and this, and then we're going to track it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's all very interesting. It's just some stuff that I was thinking of, so I figured I'd ask you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. As you can see, and as probably most people watching know, I geek out on this stuff. I could talk sponsorship all day long. So
Yeah,
I appreciate any questions on that end. So,
yeah.
again, I'll let you go unless you have any other questions, because I know you gotta get back to work. Hopefully your GM's not watching and saying, man, he just spent an hour on this LinkedIn Live. But really appreciate the time and insights on that side, Chris. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Nick. I'm glad that we were able to connect, and best of luck to you. And once again, if anybody needs anything from me, please feel free to reach out through LinkedIn, and continue listening to Nick here. He's a smart guy.
Appreciate that. Thanks so much, Chris. We'll
All right,
chat
Nick,
soon.
have a good one.
Yep, see ya.